What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and I am again joined by your boy Poppy, Joe Ingram in the mix for a little main event World Series of Poker recap for day 2. Joey, another exciting day of tournament poker. What were your thoughts today?
I feel like today was a little bit boring than yesterday. Yesterday we got to see Hesp really mix it up. Today, very slow, sort of like drawn out. There wasn't any really big hands like there was yesterday with that ace-ace versus the ace-10 hand. But overall,
What's up, guys? Doug Polk
I thought it was
here,
pretty
and
fun.
I'm again joined
And
by...
I did enjoy. There was also, we had a couple guests over at the house here, so there was a lot of other gambling happening that was
Right.
also fun too. So it was a good day though, man. It was fun.
I mean, are you really watching the main if you don't have props on what cards come out and who stacks who? I mean, that's like part of the main, right?
Yeah, you certainly introduced some interesting and unique variables to gambling on the main event, I got to say. So I don't know if we're going to get into that in this episode or not, but it was pretty fun. It was a good time.
There were some times that people were up $20,000. Anyway, let's move on. We got a lot to cover today. So as far as what we're going to be doing, we're going to look at chips before the day. We're going to talk about one of the updates where someone had 4 of a kind quads, guys.
Couldn't believe it, honestly.
I couldn't believe it.
Couldn't believe the action that maybe the player took in that hand.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it was a weird line though.
Yeah.
And then we're going to break down 4 hands that we have to replay and break down what happened, talk about them a bit. Then we're gonna close out, look at this chips stack. So in the final day, who's left, who's gonna win,
Make our predictions.
I'm gonna give myself a little credit. I called the final 3 today.
You really did, man.
I did.
I gotta say, congratulations
I called the
on
final
that.
3. Me. I called all three of them.
You were right on. I think you had Pollock, you had Ott, and then of course we had Blumstein, and it was pretty good. Obviously, you took the guy that's wearing the upswing poker patch.
No, me?
It's just
No.
on ESPN, which is, by the way, amazing placement, and I think he's been playing pretty.
Yeah, definitely
great.
shout out to Dan Ott. I really do appreciate the repping the patch. Anyway, let's jump into it. Let's go ahead and jump right into the into the thick of it here. Oh shit, that is weird.
You drunk,
looking.
Doug?
I'm not drunk.
He's not drunk.
I'm
He's
not
not
drunk.
drunk. He doesn't
Okay.
honestly, he was
There
gambling.
we have it. Okay, is this the stream is working, correct?
It's good.
Okay, we're good. All right,
It's
cool.
good.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what it was like coming into today. As you guys can see here, we had 7 players, and we had some really, really short stacks coming in. And we kind of knew that when they started, there was going to be a lot of just jamming over opens, a lot of open jamming. We have 3 players here that are all under the 15 big blind mark, 1.2 million chip big blind, 3 stacks at 16 million or under. And I was actually a little surprised that they hung around for so long. I think that both Ott found a double essentially, threw some non-showdown pots pretty quickly. Saut Antoine also got, I think, a double. I think he got it on pretty double.
But were you really surprised by how conservative and how tight we saw some of the play? I mean, I think yesterday kind of showed us that a lot of these guys were playing pretty conservative, making some folds that I certainly know you were not in agreement with. And I think today out of the gate, I wasn't surprised to see the tightness of play.
Honestly, there were a couple folds today that I thought were just like way too tight. There was a hand where Polak opened 8s and Dan Ott shoved ace queen suited. It was like 10 or 11 more blinds to call. Very clear call, but he did lay it down, which I thought he was net rolling in, but then he folded. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, at least he was taking his time. Right. And speaking of taking his time,
speaking of I
this guy was on life tilt while we were watching the main today.
What is this guy doing, man? He's doing the Argentina look at your cards or so. What is he doing, man? I still don't understand what Salas was doing. He took 6 seconds. He had the jack 4. He had 10. I just don't understand what his strategy was, Doug.
Okay, let's start off with this, right? It's the main event. I think taking a moment to really appreciate the fact you're there is fine. I think if you have a decision that's maybe not even that close, but you're going to fold, but it's kind of a spot, sure. But when you just have straight up nothing, and it's open 3-bet, and that's on you, and you're kind of thinking about that, just seems to be a little bit over the line to me. And again, it's one of those spots where if it was a young guy doing it, it would feel worse than if it was an older player, I think, personally. But either way, take your time. This is an event worth millions of dollars, but if you know you're going to fold, if it's open jam and you got 6-3, you could fold. You don't have to waste anyone's time. You don't have to.
Yeah, I think Sergio Sirius mentioned that he was maybe balancing his tank range, and I don't exactly think, I'm not sure, I didn't really pay attention to some other hands he played, but I guess justice, some might say, was served. I don't want to make any Argentinians mad. Shout out to my girl Pam's. Yeah, they might say justice was served when he was like, Salego, and then the 5 comes on the river.
I had never seen someone so tilted about tanking until I saw you in the event. We're like on the couch, Joey's like yelling. Anyway, all right, so
Make no
let's
fucking sense.
start off. And by the way, we were looking at updates brought to you by Poker News.
Shout out to Poker News.
Shout out
man.
to Poker News.
Great work out there. Great
really
pictures.
do great work. Very high quality updates and pictures and videos, and they just do a fantastic job. I want to make sure to give them credit. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the hand. There was 4 of a kind tonight,
Right,
which
yeah.
we don't see too often,
Especially in the main event.
And we don't have the replay up because I don't think that the hand was too interesting. Basically, Pacioli had Queen 10. The flop came Queen 10. Decent flop. Checks through in the flop. Turn is the 2 completing the flush. Check. Blumstein actually made a really kind of interesting, I would say kind of weird bet with King Deuce of clubs here on the turn. Trying to get some thin value. Way too thin when someone has a boat. Button calls the nut flush draw, and then Pacioli calls the Queen 10. The river is another queen, giving him quads, and he decides to lead out for all in.
Yeah, it seemed like people were really upset about this on Twitter too, from what I was seeing. Because I didn't make it over here by then, but people were like, "What is he doing? Why is he betting?" I know you were kind of upset about this bet, and why was that?
Well, because I don't really understand what this bet is doing. The pre-flop raiser could potentially have some overpairs you don't have, and this card is, I guess I would say this card's overall fairly neutral for all 3 players. And when you call and you're out of position multi-way on neutral cards, you generally don't have leads. Because it's going to be really hard for him to find a way to balance this lead out with some bluffs. And then also, if you're going to lead your quads, then when you check, what's it mean? And it's not hugely exploitable to not have quads, but it means you always have a 10. It's nice to once in a while have that 4 of a kind to really put people in a tough spot if they decide to get aggressive with you.
Mm-hmm. So overall, you think this lead was just very terrible? But I guess you can kind of understand where he's coming from. He's trying to just pray. If someone has a flush, they're probably not going to bet it. He's trying to maybe get some sort of crying call from a flush here.
I think it's quite bad. I think of the queens to lead, if you were going to have leads, I would say this is the worst one because you block the 10. Yeah. So if you want to try and get called by a 10 on this river, you have Queen 10. So they're more likely to just have random shenanigans, which they both had. So I think you just have to check, probably with all your hands, certainly with this one. And he didn't really put himself in a spot to get paid. Because look, here's the thing: if they have an overpay or whatever, they're gonna bet anyway. They're not gonna be like, oh, probably have quads and check. They're gonna go for some value. So
I think you see this sometimes. People get quads; they just get really excited. I think maybe there was the one hand.
I don't think that's what happened here.
You don't think so? You don't think he just got that excited? He said, I want to bet. I want to get some value. I don't want this to get checked back by 2 flushes potentially.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Also, something to consider too. We didn't really see Blumstein bluff like a single river. I think in this event so far, I think we saw one check raise that was in a blind versus blind that he did bluff. But with the exception of that one, I don't think we have seen a single bluff from Blumstein in the river. But he certainly does have enough chips to go for it. And in this spot, he might choose to bluff with some hands. If you have a hand like King Jack and you bet the flop and, or you check back the flop, bet the turn, why not take a stab again? Especially if players are going to lead their quads. Pretty good bluff spot. So I like checking, to try and get some bluffs. Maybe players try to get some thinner value. Although maybe that's not too likely. But I still think you have to be checking all your hands here out of position.
Well, I'm probably never going to have quads at the final table of the main event. And if I do, I'm not going to be able to believe it. So
Joe, you have to actually play the main event to get quads there. If you don't enter, your chances actually zero.
I fucking forgot. I showed up late. I can't help it, man. Next year I'll be there, man. Next year I'll be there. I promise you guys I'll be out there. Shout out to everybody out there that's tuning in live right now. I know it's pretty late. It's about midnight here on the West Coast, 3 a.m. on the East Coast too. So
let's jump into some hands. Okay?
Let's see it.
I know you guys like your hand review. I know you guys like it. Okay, let's break some down. So
let's get it.
First hand we're going to talk about here is a hand, and I think these are in order, but now that I'm looking at this one, I don't think that they are. So whatever. So we're gonna just pretend that they might be in order. All right. Action folds to Benjamin Pollock on 20 blinds here in the cutoff with Queen 5 suited, and I'm just kind of open with this. Do not open this hand. I mean, I know John Hesp is in the big blind, and of people's big blinds to open into, sure, it's a pretty good one. But on this stack, the players behind, if you open, they can absolutely three bet you all in, with a lot of hands, because they're going to have good fold equity. And generally speaking, on 20 big blinds, you have to be very careful what you open. because you start opening too wide, it's so easy just to jam hands over that open profitably. If you open a standard cutoff range, let's call it 30, 32, 35%, you can only really call, particularly six-handed here, you're only going to really be able to call like 3 to 5% of those hands, so maybe 6, 7%, but not certainly not over 7. So you're just going to fold like 80, 85% to the jam, which means they just print by 3-betting over you. So you have to be a lot more conservative in that spot. Obviously, I think he's doing this because Hesp is in the big blind. Right. But, like, the kind of adjustment I might make is maybe I start opening Queen 8 suited that I might normally fold, or maybe even Queen 7. But you get all the way down to Queen 5, then you're probably just opening too many hands. And maybe he thinks, like, I haven't opened in a while, but that's just not the way you should look at poker.
Yeah, that's kind of what you were saying in real time, too. You said maybe he's been playing tight. He felt like this was just a good time to decide to open. And if you're advocating a fold pre-flop, then I know it must be a fold pre-flop because you hate folding more than anybody else in the entire world. So.
Yes, that's a safe bet. All right, so anyway, open. I think Dan in the small blind, I tend to like this hand as a flat for a couple of reasons. First off, I don't think Hesp is going to be squeezing too wide in the big blind, so I think that's kind of safe in that regard. Also, your hand has good playability post-flop, so I think that's another thing to take into consideration. If you want to argue for a jam, I can kind of see where you're coming from on that side too. But I think I'd rather jam with some hands that I think have worse playability in single raise pot. Maybe some of like the weaker ace X hands, suited wheel aces that have better equity when they're called. And additionally, maybe some like mid to low pairs. I think I prefer all of those hands as bluffs over the suited broadways. I tend to like to call suited broadways in a lot of spots just because I think that they play well, and it's it's nice to have those hands in that flat range.
So is there any merit here to calling in Dan's spot also to keep Hesp potentially in the pot as well?
Makes some sense.
Yeah.
But again, no matter how bad someone is, them being in the pot, at least they're gonna have a chance to realize the equity. Mm-hmm. And Hesp can only make so big of mistakes on what's around 12 or 13 blinds here. Okay. 13 blinds. So anyway, Dan calls in the small blind, and Hesp decides to come along here in the big blind. Jack 10-6, checks to Pollock, and I don't really hate either way from Pollock here in the cutoff. I think in general with this hand, I lean a little bit more towards a bet. You have a lot of playability on different turns and rivers. Like if this turn comes really an ace, king, 9, 8, or heart, you're gonna be able to barrel pretty aggressively. And I think it plays well to have some queen eye bluffs in that barrel range if you're gonna open this pre. However, checking also a fine play. This is a board that I think the small blind definitely has a bunch of hands that connect, so I don't mind that. Hesp certainly overplays some hands to where your bets on the flop might be a little bit less solid. Mm-hmm. So I don't hate the check. I wouldn't mind to see a bet either though.
I think sometimes people get a little bit too carried away when they open a little bit too light. Sometimes from a cutoff, and then they just maybe over c-bet with a queen 5 here too.
But that's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But this hand, the reason I think that a check is good is because you have so many other bluffs to pick from. You have 9-8, queen 9, 9-7. 8-7, king queen, king 9, maybe even ace king, ace queen, some other backdoor flush draw hands as well, maybe with an over. So you definitely have a lot of good choices as far as bluffs go, and that's kind of why I think check is fine. Mm-hmm. But it just plays so well as a bet that I think I prefer to go for the flop bet. Got some people live in the chat, but I think I saw A-Weiss in the mix. Shout out to A-Weiss.
I'm loving these comments today. These are
great. Comments are great.
These are really great.
Anything is better than Veo heads up, most passive poker player ever. Yeah, a lot of people were not Veo fans when we did some videos before. Anyway, turn 9. Again, Dan does have second pair here with a gutter. John Hesp with ace high and a gutter, but a pretty bad gutter. Mm-hmm. I think these are two pretty standard checks over to Pollock again, who now has a mandatory bluff. I mean, if you're not going to bluff this, you have equity. You have queen high. You shouldn't even be able to have queen high in this pre-flop range. Super standard bet. And I like his size too, just around half pot. I wouldn't maybe mind to see it slightly smaller, but he is setting up river jam against Dan Ott. So I really don't mind this. Mm. I think this is a fine play. Dan is choosing the small blind, a very clear call. Second pair, gutter, not really too much to talk about, and has a clear fold. So this is pretty standard, I think.
It's a very clear call from Dan here. No question, just a clear call.
I can't see anything other than call.
Okay.
You're going to bet some jacks on the turn. And then after that, you're going to have some mid to low pairs, maybe a couple ace high hands. I think this is just a pretty standard call.
Okay.
The river comes to 7 of clubs. And I was thinking about this in the moment. Now, what's kind of interesting about this spot is I don't really know if Pollock really has many 8s, okay? Because let's kind of walk through some of the 8s he could have, right? I think 8-7 is going to bet the flop, so I don't think he really has 8-7. I don't think 8s will not bet the turn. It'll check, so he doesn't have 8s. 9-8 is going to bet the flop, and if it doesn't bet the flop, it's definitely checking the turn. 9-8 would be way too weird of a turn bet. There's really no room to get any value. And then 10-8's too thin. So he's kind of saying if he's trying to represent 8, he's saying that he has either Jack 8 suited or maybe like a Ace 8, King 8 suited hand that bluff turn and got there.
With backdoor flush as well too.
Right, I'm talking about other straights.
Okay.
After that, how many flushes can you really have either? Maybe Ace X of clubs, but other than that, what flushes does he really have?
Right, that he wouldn't bet on the flop. Maybe some 6s too. King. I mean, if he's opening Queen 5, he's probably opening a King 6 type clubs type hand.
Yeah, but he's not betting that on the turn. He has showdown.
Yeah.
You're gonna check turn. So he's only repping somewhere between 10 to 14 value combos, depending on what exactly is going on. So he can only really have like around 6 to 7 bluff combos.
I see why people get so much better watching your videos at Noble Hold'em. This is crazy. I mean, I mainly play Great Game of Pot in Omaha, and I feel like I can definitely understand why people love your videos, man.
Thanks, man.
They got to learn so much from watching this stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's I try and drop some knowledge when I can. So on this river, you would obviously rather bluff with a club. Don't get me wrong. Like if I could have like maybe a hand that he could have here is a hand like Ace Queen with a club, but it's kind of hard to think of club hands you can bluff with. I mean, what hand can open cutoff, check back flop, bet turn, and have only one club? I can't even really think of any hands. I don't know if I can name one other than Ace Queen with a club. And when that's the case, even though you'd prefer to have a club, I think you just have to take your worst hands and you just gotta pray. You just pray. And like I'm not saying I'm thrilled. I'm not like sweet. I got Queen 5 here, but like. I mean, if you jam here and bust, you can feel at least somewhat okay about it because it was the bottom of your range, and then past that, I don't think that the 7 really hits the small blind's call range too much. I mean, yeah, you can have 8-8 or like maybe 9-8 suited that didn't 3-bet pre, but he's way more likely to have hands like Queen Jack, King 10, Queen 10, Ace 9 suited because the small blind flat range in 20 blinds shouldn't be that wide. So I don't really think that it helps him too much. And as far as flushes go, yeah, maybe Jack X of clubs. But a lot of those are going to bet the turn. And if he just has a flush draw with no pair, he's probably betting the turn himself. So I think this is the kind of river where against a big blind, it's actually not a very good river because they can certainly have some 8s. But against a small blind, it's not nearly as bad as it looks.
So if you're Pollock, you're going to bet all in?
I think I'm going to go all in and pray. All in and pray. I do a decent chunk of that. All in and
I do that all the time too.
And then you just have to pray.
I try to sometimes call and pray, bet and pray. I mean, I think prayer is a very underrated aspect of poker.
Pray, yeah. Shout out to Jerry.
Shout out to Jerry Yang, man.
Jerry Yang, yeah. Shout out to Jerry Yang. I almost forgot his name there.
So Pollock bets here as odd position. So we've kind of broken down Pollock's range here. Are you gonna make the crying call here? Are you gonna tank and then?
I think Ott has to fold. I mean, like he can have a few jacks. Those are definitely better calls. He can occasionally have a straight. He can have 8-8 and 9, maybe 9-8 suited, maybe 10-8 suited, but both those are kind of maybes. So he can have some straights. He can occasionally have a flush, but I don't think there are really many combos of that at all. And then so the question is, how many hands does he have to call after that? And I don't think too many. He can have maybe a few 9s have to fold like Ace 9 suited, maybe Queen 9 suited, although that's kind of late pre. But I think you can fold some 10s. You can fold some 10s. And maybe, if you want to call one pair hands, I'm thinking King Jack or Queen Jack. Particularly Queen Jack is a hand I would check turn with a check call. I think that's your hand. I think your 10, you can just let it go. King 10, Queen 10, Ace 9 suited. I think those hands can just fold. Because it is around a pot-sized bet. So you can fold half your hands. I don't really see much of a need to call here with King 10.
So it's a half pot bet, you said?
It's a full pot bet.
Full pot bet, right.
Sorry, full pot. Sorry.
Okay. But as played, he does check it back.
I meant to say you have to call half your range.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as played, he checks it back. Dan Ott takes it down, and you were very excited about that too, because
I was rooting for Ott.
Dan Ott's repping the upswing.
I was rooting for Ott, and I was racing. By the way, shout out to Michael Rodriguez dropping $5 in the chat. What up, man?
Miguel Rodriguez.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what I get for
Papio. I know my Spanish name.
All right, let's move on to the next hand here. Let's move on to the next one. Nope. Okay.
Oh, this hand's amazing. This hand's great, man.
So we want to make one quick note here because we were not sure and we couldn't find it afterwards. We do not entirely know if this hand was offsuit or not. I seem to remember being suited.
Yeah, I remember being offsuit.
So I'm gonna just
The chat will know.
The chat will let us know. Please let us know in the chat. But anyway, fairly loose call here on the 18 big blinds with 10 off on the button. But sometimes you gotta play a little post flop, Joey.
I mean, in position against the action player.
The action player.
The action player.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small line folds, and Pollock has a very clear call, and we're taking a flop. And the flop is an action one.
Bingo.
Finally, the fortunes of Scott Blumstein are turning around here.
Mm-hmm.
Trips over trips, not where you want to be. And the action on the flop is actually kind of interesting. Hesp decides
He had ace-jack of
to
hearts.
bet the flop. He did have ace-jack of hearts. I remember that. I don't mind that, by the way. He blocks some ace-queen, some queen-jack.
10-9 spades, they say, too.
10-9 spades.
Okay, so you're right.
Oh!
Some people say it's offsuit.
It was suited.
I'm pretty sure. Okay.
Oh, what's up, guys? Shout out to the chat, by the
It
way.
makes more sense for me to have 10-9 suited there than 10-9 offsuit here. Come
Much
on.
appreciated over there, guys. Much appreciated. Wow.
9-10 spades.
It's nice. Okay. I know, 2 cards is a lot to remember. Anyway, so Hess bets $5 million. Scott raises to $12 million. I'm going to have to say I don't like this. I think Scott should call and evaluate. Because for starters, this is one of his worst trips. So if he raises every trip, he can't have it in his call range. And I would like to occasionally have it in my call range. So the big blind takes a check raise, we're fine. Or if John decides to barrel.
Mm-hmm.
I like to have a few trips in the call range. The better trips do worse as flats because they want more opportunity to get value, whereas the worst ones have less hands to get value from. So I think the better trips make more sense as raises. But I think you gotta keep John Hesp in the pot. I mean, the guy can have a lot of hands here. He frankly, the way he seems to play, I would not be surprised to see another $5 million chip bet in the turn with kind of a lot of hands. And I wouldn't mind Benjamin Pollock in the big blind trying to take a turn with a queen. That's drawing quite thin. If you raise to 12 here, you really do screw Pollock. He's got to fold most of his hands, almost all of his hands. I think he should probably call a few queens. But, can Blumstein even bluff Hesp with how short Hesp is? Maybe. But if Hesp goes all in, it's only 10 million more. And I can't imagine Scott's going to be able to work into too many bluffs here. So maybe you can just fold your queens. Maybe you can just fold almost all your hands here in the big blind.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to play poker sometimes, Joey.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was asking you downstairs. When Pollock cold calls to the 3-bet here, it's like, well, it seems to me he's saying I have a 9, and most of his 9s, I mean, he's going to have some worse 9s, 9, 8, 9, 7, but most of his 9s aren't going to be beating 9, 10. So it's a very weird hand to me. It's very interesting hand, kind of weird. Yeah.
I think he's saying that he either has some kind of very strong draw, let's just say King Jack of Diamonds or something, or and you might even fold that.
Right.
But he's saying that, or he has a quite good queen, maybe King Queen or something of hearts. Okay, I'm not saying that I think it's super likely, but I'm just trying to give some.
Right, yeah, trying to.
Or he's saying it as a 9.
Right.
So I don't like doing anything in the big blind here other than just only calling. I think call or fold. That's one of the reasons why I do like to occasionally work in calling with some not 9s, because when you do that, it looks like you have a 9, right? So sometimes you call with slightly looser hands to set the bluff in the later street.
Okay.
I know that sounds crazy, but
okay.
All right.
I believe you.
Not often. I believe
you. I believe that you're bound to balance your cold call range here from the blind.
Often.
I believe it. It's okay.
Once in a while. Anyway, He does decide to call. Hesp gets out of the way, and this is how you do it. By the way,
this is how you win the main event, baby.
If you want to win the main event, you got to prepare. Your body and mind have to be ready to turn the 10. Okay, so you move into the lead now, and Polak checks. I don't like this next play from Scott. It's close. Okay, I guess it's close. Because here's the thing. I think it's very likely Pollock has a 9. So the question is, what 9s can Pollock have in the big blind? You can have ace 9, king 9, queen 9, jack 9, 10 9, and then really the lower 9s as well are all flatting pre. So my problem with checking the turn is that there are going to be so many rivers where a 9 is just devastated. If this river is a king, jack, 8, or diamond, or queen, or 10, a 9 is going to be a super unhappy camper. And that's a lot of rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And in those spots, I lean towards going for value a little bit quicker, I guess. However, if you think that maybe Pollock won't call with a lot of those hands, he's only going to call with like his boats or maybe like ace-9 with ace-diamonds or something, then maybe checking here does make some sense to try and get some value on later streets. But
I think Pollock ever
it's a weird spot, man.
has ace-x of diamonds. I don't think so. I would imagine he probably just folds that.
I don't think he does.
Right. Okay.
I don't think he does because the problem with ace-x of diamonds, if you just cold call, Hesp is still behind. Like Hesp can jam. And then you open up all kinds of shenanigans. Hesp jams, now it's back on Scott. So, maybe what Scott's saying here with this is he doesn't think he should be betting almost any hands here on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because Pollock's range is just so strong, he's just going to check a lot here, which does make some sense. So I guess I'm kind of coming around to the check. I started off not liking it. It's a weird spot, man.
It's a very weird
I don't
spot.
think
It's incredibly weird spot. Yeah,
how often do you have
yeah.
it's just a weird situation.
We don't have this in the lab, unfortunately. So
we do not have this in the lab.
Yeah.
But he does say to check it back. This is where it gets real cray.
Yeah. So Pollock did have the jack of diamonds here in this spot.
He did.
Because I remember we were talking
He did.
about potentially turning his hand to a bluff here.
Pollock did have the jack of diamonds. That is important and true. So Pollock checks. Scott bets 8 million. And you know what? I said this during the hand. I actually like this size from Scott a lot because he's betting a size that sort of allows him to bet a straight. Because he's being so small that a lot of the hands of be a straight will have already bet. And he's going to want to be able to bet in this spot if he does have a jack. Now, I don't exactly know the way he's calibrating his flop raise range. If it's only trips, it's kind of a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know what he's doing against Hesp. And for that reason, maybe the flop raise, the flop should probably just have been called, but whatever. So I don't hate this size. I think the really interesting thing for Pollock here is what to do with Jack-9 with the Jack of Diamonds, because if you're going to ever bluff raise, I feel like that hand is like the best hand.
Mm-hmm.
You block King Jack of Diamonds or King Jack or Jack 8 of Diamonds, which maybe Scott raised those on the flop to get in against John Hesp. Maybe he raised some of those combo draws on the flop, banged off the straight flush, and checked back the turn. That's possible. So having a Jack of Diamonds completely removes that. You also know Scott doesn't have quads. I'm not saying I think he raises quads on the flop, but he doesn't have them because you have the 9. And then of your 9s, this is, you're going to want to fold some 9s probably. It's a small bet, but you probably want to fold a few 9s. This hand kind of makes sense to bluff raise. You can have King 9. You can have Queen 9.
We did see a lot of bluff raises here in the main event so far on the river. So
We did not see many.
we saw none. I believe we saw none on the river. So, but I'm
just putting it out there.
Right.
I know that there are still 6 or 7 players left here, so you don't want
matter.
to bust. But you're gonna put Scott in a really terrible spot with a bunch of hands. I think even with 10-9, if Pollock jams here, I think Scott is very unhappy. People played so passive on these rivers.
Exactly right.
Is it really a flush? No. He's saying he has a boat, and he blocks a bunch of the really strongest hands. I wouldn't have mind seeing a bluff jam.
So I guess in Pollock's spot here, he tanked for a while. He thought about it for a while, and then he did decide to fold. What do you think about the fold here?
Well, it was obviously a good fold versus what he had, but I just don't think you can fold Jack-9, Jack of Diamonds. I think out of all the 9s you have, it's just too high up there. I think if you're considering folding, I like it as a bluff raise. But what it also kind of boils down to here is what does Scott's raise to 12 million range look like given the Hesp is so short? Because it's very hard to bluff like that. You could. I think it's possible. You're risking 12 million to win a very good sized pot, but I think most players tend to not like to raise to sizes where if someone jams for not much more, they have to fold. So
didn't we see Scott make a small raise? Maybe it wasn't a multi-way spot. I think it was a heads-up spot. Maybe on the first day. I think we saw him do something like that where he made a bluff raise like this, and I don't know if he got shoved on. I can't quite remember the action, but I think we have seen this from him before with a little bit weaker of a hand too. So I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility. Could have potentially been bluffing here on the flop. I don't think it's very likely, but it's not out of the possibility. It could have happened.
It could have happened.
Yeah.
So
maybe, I don't know.
It's hard when you see okay, so just as I take a step back and talk about Scott Blumstein for a bit here, it's tough, man, because I mean, like, by the time this hand's happened, we've seen 100 hands in 2 days
Mm-hmm.
of, like, full ring poker. That's so little. That's so little poker to have seen to, like, try and gauge if someone has bluffs or not in these spots, you know? It seems like the answer is likely no, but it's hard to really know that for sure. So, I think you just have to. I just don't think you can fold with Jack 9, Jack of Diamonds. I think it's too high up there. I know a lot of your other nines are boats, but you definitely have Ace 9. You definitely have 9-8, 9-7. Maybe certainly the weaker nines that are flat, that are suited. And by the way, Pollock had been playing pretty gangster in the big blind with the flats. There was a 5 deuce off flat that happened. So I would not put it out of the realm of possibility facing a button open as well, my call, or sorry, a cutoff open and a button call, that he could have like the 9-4 ball. I'm not saying he would. I'm just saying it not impossible. All right. Anyway, did make the laydown. So I mean, props to Pollock. He got away from one there, but sometimes I feel like you gotta lose your chips, guys. You gotta see quads. That's a good hand. All right. Let's fire up hand number 3 here.
Sometimes you just got to lose your chips.
Sometimes you do. All right, this was another interesting hand. I think the river play is really what's most interesting here. So we'll kind of fast forward through this a little bit. Dan opens the button. Scott calls big. Dan goes for some flop value with his top pair. Scott makes a simply too loose float here. You know, if you're gonna call with an ace, have a spade. Probably the ace of spades. So you have more ability to play on different runouts. The thing is, on this board, I'd rather call King X, 9X, 10X, Jack X, Queen X, spades. So I just think this is just simply too low in the range of hands you're calling pre-flop. Even if they're bluffing you, they're going to barrel a bunch. If they have a value bet, you're just drawing so thin. Yeah, I can't say I'm a huge fan of this.
I thought this hand was interesting because I think J-Mo was here. You guys were sort of talking about this hand as it was going on and talking about the range of hands, and I thought it was just kind of fascinating to hear you two discuss this and discuss Blumstein, his check call range from the big blind here.
Very, very true. Turn 9, no one's happy. No one's happy here at all. Scott checks. Dan takes the check back. Pretty standard check here with top pair. And do you know what? You want to know how you win the main?
You win the main by hitting an offsuit king on the river.
Is that how you win the main?
That's how you win the main.
All right, let's see what happens. Oh, my God. How did you know?
I don't know.
Have you seen this before?
This is my first time seeing this
Wow.
hand.
That's exciting.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so the board's is straight. The big blind should not have many aces. The button should definitely have
some aces.
The question is, are a lot of those aces betting flop checking turn? I'd say maybe some of them, but I'm not sure how many. I think in the big blind here, you got to go with a check all your hands strategy. And maybe you want to argue for a small bet range. That's fine. But here's the thing about this spot. You know, you're playing the board unless you have an ace, obviously. So the button's open range is going to have way more aces relative to all the hands the button can have compared to the big blind. The big blind's got 2 cards that weren't that good. That's basically the big blind. The button has a hand that opened into a shorter stack small blind and the chip leading big blind. So I would imagine almost every ace is raising pre. And it's not totally unreasonable to take a stab with those hands on Queen Jack 10. You know, you don't have really that much showdown value, not really that much playability. And yeah, so I think it's a spot where the big blind should probably check all of his hands to the button. Because if you lead your aces and check when you don't have it, then you kind of leave yourself out to dry against overbets.
Right. So what do you think about the size that he decided to go with, Doug?
I like it.
18.4,
I like it.
Something like that?
I think if you do bet here, it needs to be an overbet. Because on these spots where the board is straight, if you don't bet over the pot, then your opponent's odds to call are just so good that you have to bet a big size so that you're able to bluff. If you bet $5 million here, you can't bluff because they're just getting too good of a price. They're calling $5 million to win $8.5 million, and I mean you're not going to have that many aces on the flop.
So what you were saying while this hand was taking place is that you think that Dan shouldn't fold here. You think that Dan has to call.
Well, so against this exact size, it's tough. I mean, what you should probably do is call like a little less than half the time because your opponent's risking 18.6 to win 17, right? But, you know, he can bet this knowing that when he's called, a lot of the times it's going to be a chop. So, you know, maybe you have to call a little more than that at the time. Maybe you have to call like 60% or so. Of the hands to call with, you don't really want to have. I think. I don't think removal is that important, man. Flip a coin. Flip a coin. Just do whatever. Just get the coin out. Go for the flip. I mean, you can't fold. You can't fold all the time. If you're just folding unless you have an ace, then like.
I guess we can kind of look at what we've seen from Blumstein so far, as we mentioned, and they see these hands. We haven't seen him bluff any rivers yet. Especially, haven't seen him make a bet like this at all yet. So
yeah, but this is a very unique spot.
Yeah.
The board being a chop probably doesn't have too much appeal. The board being a chop.
Not often, you're right.
The board being a chop is a pretty unique situation. So I like. Okay, so I don't think I like Scott's decision to bet, but if you do bet, I really like his size. It puts the button in a really tough spot, and it gives you an opportunity to bluff if you want to bluff. So I like that. In Dan's shoes,
Wait, the board can't be a chop and peel. I was thinking about this for a second.
Bro, what? Are you kidding me?
I was thinking,
Are you kidding me?
I was thinking if the board was like 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. Well, then obviously, like if two big bets are, it's probably gonna chop that pretty easily.
You
but
play
the board
PLO for a living.
You
play PLO for a living.
Listen, man, I don't even know. I was trying to think about that for what I was like, wait.
Wow.
No, you're right. It cannot be. If there's two
cannot
cards
be.
in your hand, right?
Right.
Listen,
Yeah.
I've been watching Hold'em for the past 2 days, man.
You
My
have
mind
to
is
use-
like, I'm ready to play Texas Hold'em. I'm ready to give myself over to the 2-card gods. Okay, I played it for the first 4 years of my career. I'm ready to go back. I'm in. I'm kidding.
All right. Okay. All right. Anyway, I mean, it was a great laydown by Dan. Obviously, that he had it. Should he fold? I guess I'd prefer to call hands that don't have a spade, which he doesn't. Man, I don't know how important removal is here. Call out the time, guys. Figure out how you want to do it,
Flip the coin.
or just fold because you know he has it. If you can do that, that's actually an especially good play. All right. So
Oh, it's a big hand.
this is a big hand. This was a very big hand. This is what well, I want no spoilers here. The blinds got up to 1 million, 2 million. We got a lot in play. Scott raises the button. The big blind does not have 6 million. This is just a random number. Antoine decides to call this one with King Jack. I don't hate this. I think I'd probably prefer just to see an all-in. Like you got like 17, 18 blinds.
Mm-hmm.
Just deny that button's equity. If he calls, whatevs. They got the King Jack, but he does say take a flop. Jack 7-6, great flop for Antoine. Checks, and this actually I found kind of surprising. Don't worry.
How do you win the main event?
We're gonna get there.
Okay.
We're gonna get there. But I found this kind of surprising. Scott elects to check here on the flop. And normally I would say I like to bet with my straight draws. I do think on a board like Jack 7-6, checking some of them is pretty good. Because if you bet every straight draw, it's just so many hands. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you Scott's going to town on these blinds. Guarantee you. Anyway, Joey, so let's say you check back 5-3, right? And you're trying to win the main event.
Okay.
All right? Just picture a card. What does the turn look like? Let me know just so that I can like kind of imagine it too.
Okay, I'm imagining it right now.
All right, what is it? What do you see in your head?
The 4 of clubs.
Oh my God! How did you know?
I don't know.
It's too good.
I don't know. How
He's
can you
too
win
good.
That's how you got to win the main event.
He's
you gotta
too good.
You got to hit the gut
Okay,
shot.
so finally Scott catches a break.
Thank God. He's been running so bad all day.
Honestly, like you have to like really take a step back. And like honestly, I haven't seen Scott make too many bad plays. I wasn't a fan of the Queen 10 river bet, but I think the flop turn were all fine. I think overall Scott's played well.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the guy is hitting everything. He's hitting everything out here. Hide your kids, hide your chips, hide your wife. The guy, everyone's getting stacked out here. So anyway, turns a 4. And I think actually this is a pretty good question in Antoine's spot in the small blind. Should you be betting or checking? I kind of lean towards a bet. You know, you have a very strong hand. You have top pair. You got the second nut flush draw. So I think I'd prefer to see him bet. However, you know, checking and making sure you do have some hands that are definitely going to check call. I don't hate that either. But I think bet jam is just totally fine here. The pot's 12 million. You got 32. Like, I'd prefer to see a bet. But anyway, he does check. Got some interesting people in the chat today. 5-3 goes for the half pot bet. Totally standard check call over King Jack.
So sick.
I mean, like, how is that the river?
So sick, man.
It is honestly
The offsuit Jack binks off.
It is honestly the offsuit Jack River Scott jams. And by the way, I really like the Scott one for the whole kit and the caboodle here.
Yeah, I thought he might go for a little bit less here.
Yeah.
But I was kind of surprised to see him make this pot size a little bit over bet.
I think this is a pretty smart size because I think that, well, in general in this spot, I think the small blind doesn't have too many jacks. So I like using a bigger size so I can value bet, or sorry, a bigger size so I can bluff more. I can get more columns of bluffs in there. It puts Antoine in a really tough spot, ICM situation. And then, of course, if he does have a jack, then yeah, he's going to call, which when you have a straight, pretty good. Pretty good. So I don't mind the size at all. I think this is actually pretty well played from Scott. And I mean, Antoine has no way around this. You have to call. You have trips, you have the flush blocker.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just fold everything because like he probably has it. You got to eventually call. And he did make the call, but
I want to do a recreation of when Scott makes this bet. Antoine tanks for a little bit. He's tanking. He makes the call. Scott jumps up, runs to the rail, hops up, and then comes back, looks at the board, sees that he won, and then like starts to celebrate, and then shakes his hand. And as people were kind of upset about that in-your-face sort of celebration by Scott, but you get caught up in the moment. You're very excited. You just, I mean, I can understand Scott maybe making a celebration like that, but some people on Twitter seem to be a little upset about that.
So you know what? I always kind of feel like that whenever I whenever I win a big all-in, I try to be pretty humble. And then in the one drop, there was an all-in where I got all-in against Antonio, where we got all in. It was a classic flip. It was like 2 tables left, and he won for like 2/3 of my chips or half my chips. And he ran over the rail, gave high fives, and then actually started doing a dance. He just started doing like a straight dance in the feature. And I was looking at him just dancing and singing along as he's just like taking my chips, and I was like, okay, it's on. Celebrating is gonna happen. Celebrate. I think it's fine. I think it's less about like you lost, and it's more about like I'm like having this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. I do find, especially if you're playing cash games, you should be extremely humble though. If you're in a cash game, if you're playing a cash game and you stack someone, you give them a couple fist pumps and like give your friends a high five. And unless it's like Sean Deeb, that's like pretty bad mannered. Sean Deeb, you should do that, by the way. If any of you are watching, if you ever have a chance to slow roll Sean Deeb and then give your friends a high five, go for it. You have you can say that's from Doug. I got your back. But anyway, in general, that would be pretty mean,
Yeah.
In the main, whatever, it's exciting.
Or if you're playing against a friend of yours who happens to be named Colleen and you're playing PLO.
Oh God, are we gonna do this?
You definitely want to slow roll her
for
sure.
Are we gonna do this?
Yeah, you want to slow her for sure.
Let's not do this. All right. Okay, so those are the hands that we want to break down. Let's take a look at how the chips fell to end the day. Scott, 226, Joey.
Jesus.
Let's see what that is. Let's see what is 226. So 226
take a guess. What do you think it is?
divided by 361. He's got 63% of all the chips in play. Dan has 88 million, healthy, solid stack, but still a lot of work to do, obviously. And then Benjamin Pollock coming in as the short stack on 46 million. But you know what, man? 46 million still around 22 blinds. Definitely room to maneuver.
Yeah, I think the three debatably best players made it to this point that we've seen play. We saw Ben Lamb get eliminated pretty early, but I feel like from what I've seen, Pollock plays pretty well. Dan Ott plays pretty well. Blumstein's played pretty well too. So I'm not surprised to see these three guys make it here. And as you said, 22 big blinds, 44 big blinds for Ott, and obviously Blumstein's got the overwhelming chip lead. I think it's anybody's game, man. I really do.
I agree across the board. I do have to say too, though, especially for Ott and for Blumstein, they've run so card hot. I mean, Dan got so many, there were so many times he's opened ace king, got 3-bet and jam, they folded, or it got jacks or kings when someone opened jam,
A7,
yeah. And for Scott as well, I mean, he's just had so many value bets that it skews the perspective. It's like, man, he's playing great. Well, yeah, he has the goods always in his barreling. When a player is always betting and always has the goods, they look pretty pro.
Exactly right.
And you're like, damn, this guy's really good.
Right. When you have Jack 8 and you check that flop, you turn a gut shot, you bet river top pair. Then you're gonna look good.
I think we're gonna see more. At least I hope tomorrow. I hope we get to see some deeper stacks spots where players actually have some tough decisions, and we get to see kind of all three of these players really. We get to see kind of what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish. Easy to forget that Pollock had a really bad beat today. He had ace king and a Hesp's aces.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have ace king versus aces in a short stack like that, you just lose whatever you have. So that was obviously terrible for him, but he's still around, still kicking. And Pollock, if he gets a double, You know, he's good to go. I mean, look,
I mean,
even though he's the short stack, guys, he still has like 12 or 13% of the chips in play. You know, he's got 46 divided by 361. Yeah, he's got 13% of the chips. He's an 8. He's a 7-1 shot. You know, he's not in any way out of this.
I agree.
Even though he's the short stack, he's totally in it. So,
all right, Doug. Important question.
okay,
Who you got to win?
Joey, I have to go with my boy Dan Ott.
Dan Ott?
I have to go with him. I'm gonna show up tomorrow. Actually, we're gonna do a little pregame sesh, like talk about some stuff.
Okay.
Get ready to go for the final table, and I'm actually gonna go rail at the event.
Nice.
So I got to root for my boy, man. I got Dan Ott's back. He's got the upswing poker on.
I'm gonna go. I got to pick to win.
Okay.
I'm going Scott Blumstein.
Wow.
That's my pick
Whoa.
to win. I'm going out on the
Holy
ledge
shit.
officially.
Alert social media. Huge call here. Joey taking one. Wow. Sick. That's sick, dude. What makes you think he's gonna win?
I just think he's got the overwhelming chip lead. I think he has the podcast run good because he was out just on my podcast
Very
on
good
his
point.
side. And
That was an amazing plug.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, listen, I don't know how he can
He's
lose.
got the podcast run good, which you can find at Joe Ingram 1 over here on
Find it
YouTube.
on my channel. Make sure you check it out. You learn more about the chip leader and future World Series of Poker main event champion Scott Blumstein himself. Correct.
I'm excited, man.
Doug, did you mention any sort of giveaway if Dan Ott, who's repping the upswing poker, if he wins, he's got the upswing poker?
He does.
Will there be a potential giveaway?
I don't think we have one going right now, but that's always subject to change. And if it does happen this time around, I will remember to mention it because sometimes I forget. I will mention it should it happen. But
Doug Polk has authorized me to give away one tournament course for PLP's Masterclass. If Dan Ott can take this down to win, you make sure you like this video and then wait for something that happens on social media at some point in time. And this is subject. It might not happen, but it could happen. That's all.
well, we'll think of something that we can do.
There's got to be a fun giveaway. If Dan Ott takes this down,
if-
he comes back. He's crying the short stack so hard. He got the coaching from you. He's repping upswing. I don't know, man. People got to.
What's not to love?
What's not to love, man?
what-
You've only give away $25,000 this summer, $30,000 this summer. So
Yeah. So actually, we have a little bit of drama with the giveaway, the main giveaway winner.
I heard about this.
We have a little bit of drama. So, they signed up and typed in the wrong email, but I have their name and I've been talking to the actual person, getting some identification.
His email is.
I mean, I'm sure it's public.
Yeah.
So, I mean, probably just gonna see if you can verify that is the guy and like show his ID and stuff. And if he can, then we'll probably.
But if not, we got to redraw the giveaway, right?
I got to think about what's fair. Someone's winning. I'm not keeping the 25. Someone's gonna win. But I'm probably gonna just make sure he's that guy and pay him. But I want to make sure I do the right thing. But guys, look, if you're in the giveaway, don't put the wrong email in. That's just you're just like.
Please.
Like, why have that amount of variance? You know, like, oh, sweet, I won 25K, but I have the wrong email. So now there's some other, just like needless complication. But anyway, that's going to do it for us here today. Joey, thank you for joining us.
Much love, man. It was fun watching
Much
here
love.
with you.
Couple
Enjoy.
recaps.
Listen, enjoy watching it tomorrow over there. It should be fun. And when Dan Ott takes this down, I'm big excited for you. I'm big excited for Upswing. I'm excited for Dan. So I'm
excited,
anxious
man.
to see who wins tomorrow. $8 million, man. Someone is going to win $8 million and may or may not have all themselves in the process. It's pretty cool.
It would be interesting to know what pieces everyone has themselves, but you just don't know, man.
Never know.
You just don't know. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. I will see you. I'm probably going to do a vlog for tomorrow, maybe.
Ooh,
So I have a
baby.
recap.
I can't wait to watch it.
Everyone loves vlogs, right? Do you
They
guys
love
love
the
vlogs?
vlogs.
So we'll probably do something with them. Maybe get some footage with Dan before the event. It could be cool too. I'll keep you guys in the loop. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the recap and day 3. Finally, we will crown a champion tomorrow.
It's over.
It's over.
Until next year.
Until next year.
No one gives a fuck about poker until next year.
All right, guys, sub to the channel. Peace. I'll see you later.